December 21st, 1978. Des Plaines, Illinois. Jhon Wayne Gacy is finally in handcuffs. Investigators have just begun tearing into the muddy crawl space beneath his suburban home, a crawl space that would ultimately surrender the remains of 29 young men and boys. To the public, Gacy was a monstrous anomaly, a solitary predator who managed to outsmart the police for years. But on that very first night in the interrogation room, Gacy looked at the detectives, leaned in, and asked a question that should have changed the entire trajectory of the investigation. He didn't ask for a lawyer. He didn't ask what he was being charged with. Instead, he looked at the officers and whispered, "Who else do you have in the station? There are others involved. Who else do you have in the station? There are others involved." For decades, the official narrative has remained ironclad. Jhon Wayne Gacy was a lone wolf. But if you look at the cold, hard data, the lone wolf narrative falls apart. The math simply does not work. In 2012, 2 Chicago attorneys conducted an independent review of the official Gacy case files. They were looking for timeline gaps. Take the case of 18-year-old Robert Gilroy. He vanished from the streets of Chicago in September of 1977. His body was later found buried deep inside Gacy's crawlspace. The problem? Documented travel receipts and corporate records placed Jhon Wayne Gacy entirely out of town, hundreds of miles away in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, during the exact multi-day window when Gilroy disappeared. Weeks later, 19-year-old John Mowry vanished. Again, his body was pulled from Gacy's home. And again, employment records prove Gacy was away on a contracting job in Michigan. If Gacy was in a different state, who targeted these young men? Who brought them to the house on Summerdale Avenue? And who put them under the floorboards? Then there is the physical reality of the crime scene. Gacy was a heavily overweight man suffering from a severe, documented heart condition. Yet the state claimed he single-handedly dug a complex 40-foot trench network through dense, muddy clay in a crawl space with less than 2 feet of clearance. He allegedly did this while carrying full-grown bodies down a narrow hatch, all by himself. But Gacy didn't live alone. He ran a business called PDM Contractors. 2 of his young employees, David Cram and Michael Rossi, frequently stayed at Gacy's house. During police questioning, both Cram and Rossi admitted to something incredible. They told detectives that Gacy had paid them to go down into that exact crawl space and dig those exact trenches. Gacy told them it was for a plumbing project. They claim they never noticed a smell. They claim they never saw a body. But a surviving victim paint a very different picture. Jeffrey Rignall was a young man who was abducted by Gacy, drugged with chloroform, and brutally tortured. Unlike the others, Rignall survived the night and was dumped in a park. Until the day he died, Rignall insisted under oath that he remembered waking up during his assault, and he was certain of one thing: there was a second man in the room, helping Gacy hold him down. If there were accomplices, why weren't they prosecuted? To find the answer, we have to look into the dark underbelly of 1970s Chicago. Gacy was briefly associated with a man named Philip Paskey. Paskey wasn't just a random construction worker. He was a known associate of John David Norman, the mastermind behind a massive multi-state underground child exploitation and human trafficking ring. This points to a theory far more terrifying than a lone serial killer. It suggests that Gacy's home wasn't just a graveyard. It was a safe house, a disposal site for a highly organized, protected network of traffickers catering to wealthy, powerful clients. If investigators pushed past Gacy, they would blow the lid off a systemic ring involving high-profile names. So, the case was closed. Gacy was labeled a lone wolf. The crawl space was filled with concrete, and the secrets were buried forever. Years later, inside Stateville Correctional Center, FBI profiler Robert Ressler sat across from Gacy. He asked him, point blank, about the accomplices. Gacy smiled, looked away, and said he stayed out of other people's business, but admitted that sometimes he would come home and the bodies would already be waiting for him. Jhon Wayne Gacy took his secrets to the lethal injection chamber in 1994. But the receipts don't lie, the timelines don't fit, and somewhere out there, the people who helped dig those graves walked away completely free.